said, we are Americans. We have the right to participate and debate any administration. Now, it isn't often I find myself agreeing with Hillary Clinton, but it's in the spirit of debate that I stand here today representing the Republican position on Guantanamo Bay. We stand firm in our belief that we should not close a terrorist holding facility in Guantanamo Bay for several reasons. It is an undisputed fact that Guantanamo Bay currently houses some of the most dangerous, radical Islamic terrorists in the world, from the 20th 9/11 hijacker who never made his plane, to Osama bin Laden's bodyguards, to al-Qaeda operatives and Taliban leaders. By closing the Gitmo facility, we would be forced to move these prisoners somewhere else, with many saying that somewhere else would be within the continental United States. It is vital to our national security to have a facility to house these dangerous terrorists. If there are some issues with the current facility, we should fix them, not expend the resources to have to build a completely new facility somewhere else. Gitmo really is an ideal location due to its proximity to the United States. It's close enough for policymakers, lawyers, and journalists to make their annual visits and have ready access, but it's also far enough away so that it doesn't pose a direct threat to the population and people of the United States. So let us be clear. There really is transparency at the detention facility. A DoD report estimates that there have been roughly 200 congressional visits, 400 media visits, and over 1,000 national and international journalist visits. The facility also works closely with the International Red Cross to ensure that acceptable, humane standards are met. To this end, we treat the detainees very well, contrary to what the Democrats will tell you. Each of them are provided with clean sheets, the Muslim holy book of the Quran, Muslim prayer beads, food in accordance with their religious customs. We teach them to read and write in English, and every Gitmo guard is subject to Article 15 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice. There are direct national security ramifications to any actions we take regarding Gitmo. The DoD estimates that there have been nearly 25 detainees who have been released from Gitmo who have resumed terrorist attacks against innocent civilians, U.S. troops, and our allies. Finally, I would like to address the issue of torture. In the recent election cycle, Republican presidential nominee made his personal opinions on torture and the closing of Guantanamo Bay very clear. And while these may be his personal opinions that many Republicans disagreed with, causing dissent within the party, I can say with certainty that we stand united in our unequivocal opposition to torture. Dana Mendoza, this year's Miss Universe, recently said after her trip to Gitmo, and I quote, "It was a lot of fun. We visited the detainees' camps and we saw the jails, where they shower, how they recreate themselves with movies, classes in art, and books. It was very interesting. Who are we to argue with Miss Universe? After all, she does have more foreign policy experience than Barack Obama."
Thank you, Noreen, for taking the Dick Cheney / Ann Coulter position. Thank you, Professor, for moderating this debate, and thank you, audience, for participating in some of the most pressing questions of our time. We must first ask ourselves how history will judge us generations from now, whether we stood for our principles and fought for what is right, or whether we stood idly by and allowed infringements upon our moral convictions. Let us not allow the United States to be a nation of hypocrisy, but a nation that is truly an example to the world. Above all, one thing is clear. Guantanamo has served for nothing more than the arena for the torture of fellow human beings. American justice and the Geneva Conventions ensure a minimum level of treatment to all humans, regardless of their character or the accusations against them. But the Bush administration used terms such as enemy combatants to deny these Guantanamo prisoners protection by international law. And they even went so far to use the term enhanced interrogation techniques, which we all know is just a synonym for torture. These tortured prisoners had no right to legal counsel or to challenge their own imprisonment. Guantanamo Bay is anything but American. It gives our enemies the propaganda to recruit more terrorists and kill innocent civilians. It is, if anything, a threat to our national security. It is a stain on our chapter of American history. It is hypocrisy on an international scale. Guantanamo Bay is right to be shut down, its prisoners granted habeas corpus, and then we can begin the process of righting what has been wronged.
You're not wrong, Ishmael. You're just ignorant as to the way the world actually works. Now let's talk about the constitutionality and you talk about the Geneva Convention. And to understand this issue, I'll point to recent Obama nominee Eric Holder to explain this issue for us. When asked whether or not the Geneva Convention applies to the Gitmo detainees. He said, and I quote, "It seems to me, given the way in which they have conducted themselves, they are not in fact people entitled to the protection of the Geneva Convention." And in order to explain this, he gave two examples. He gave the examples of the members of the French resistance after World War II and how they weren't considered prisoners of war when they had been captured. And then he posed the question, if Muhammad Atta, one of the 9/11 hijackers, had survived the attacks, would we be considering him a prisoner of war? Eric Holder's answer is, quote, "I think not." So Eric Holder's analysis and remarks accurately convey the Republican views on the law and constitutionality of the issues surrounding Guantanamo Bay. Now, we talk about the Europeans and our view of the world. Apparently, we seem to be taking our national security advice from European politicians and political pundits.
I never mentioned Europe.
But you do talk about the world, and Europe is in the world, so I'm good.
I thought you said I was the one who was ignorant about the world.
Well, you'll have your chance to You have 30 seconds.
If you want to talk about whether or not Europe is part of the world community, we can have that debate another time.
I agree.
Now, taking whether or not, let's focus on the issues, right? Now, a rhetorical barriers from these world people that you so speak of is not reason enough to close a facility so directly tied to the national security of the United States, all right? Those who continue to propagate their opposition to Gitmo would do well to base their statements in fact.
All right, you say they don't fall, their status doesn't fall under the protections of the Constitution.
Just for me, that's Eric Holder.
But regardless of what Eric Holder said, the Supreme Court ruled that they do have the right under Geneva Conventions, I believe Common Article number 3, which guarantees a minimum level of treatment. Yeah, you can shake your head all you want, doesn't matter. Mind you, this is a conservative court led by the Chief Justice nominated by President Bush, who, of course, said that who grants these prisoners the minimum protections by the Geneva Conventions.
I'm just giving you the arguments.
Let's avoid speaking when it's not our turn. Vote time. Go ahead.
Now, as you may remember, Senator John McCain had wanted to subject these prisoners to military tribunals, similar to what was the Military Commissions Act of 2006. Now, this plan was basically ruled unconstitutional by the Supreme Court. So McCain's plan was ruled unconstitutional. All right, so we can safely reject the notion that Guantanamo prisoners are not guaranteed the rights we enjoy by the Constitution.
I'd just like to make a quick point of information here that the prisoners have been treated worse in the recent months of the Obama administration than they were under 8 years of the Bush administration. And there have been numerous reports indicate this in the recent months. So, I mean, if you want to talk about treatment, let's start with that. Also, you, me, and any other normal American citizen doesn't have access to the top secret documents to exactly indicate what sort of helpful information that these prisoners have given to the United States and how they have helped benefit the United States. So you want to talk about whether or not we should keep this prison for the national security implications of it, which for the record, Ishmael, I haven't heard you talk about whether or not it actually has helped the United States. Do you or do you not believe that we have gained valuable national security information?
We have not.
You've not?
We have not.
Okay, how do you respond to the numerous government documents coming from multiple departments that said we have gained information?
Multiple departments under whose administration?
But the Obama administration has also agreed with this, that we have gained information on terrorist financing, the organizational structure of Al-Qaeda, where they're located, based on the information, factual information we've gained from Gitmo prisoners. So you want to start talking about us not gaining national security information from this to help protect people like you and me and everyone else in this room? Let's talk about that.
Freedom is not for the few, it is for all. Our civil liberties are not our burdens, they are our strengths. And if you still believe, above all this, that the Guantanamo Bay prison should be kept open and its prisoners subjugated to the torture and indefinite detention, and don't deny it, that prisoners have been tortured at Guantanamo Bay, then let me leave you with a quote by Ronald Reagan. Our ratification of the Convention Against Torture will clearly express the United States' opposition to torture, an abhorrent practice unfortunately still prevalent in the world today. Thank you.
On 9/11, the terrorists didn't distinguish between the Republicans and killing Democrats. They indiscriminately killed Americans and people of the world who believed in freedom and liberty. And many of the people responsible for those attacks are sitting in the Gitmo prison. They killed innocent men and women, our friends and family. And ensuring that they can never again commit such acts of devastating acts of terrorism against innocent people must be our absolute and #1 priority. And maintaining the facility in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba is absolutely essential to accomplishing this mission. Understanding the ideas and arguments I've made in this debate is critical to ensuring the protection of the American people. So I urge you to stand with me today and ensure that the Gitmo facility continues to be an essential part and cornerstone of our national security policy. If Miss Universe didn't want to leave Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, why should we?